Hey everybody, I am going to do a quick demo of the parallax effect using a still image. This is the first tutorial I've ever done, so bear with me. Make sure to like and subscribe. No, just kidding, I'm not doing that. That's what everybody says in these things. So anyway, here's my After Effects project, the final product, where I took a still image that I got on Envato. I cut out the foreground, which is the man and the rock ledge, separated it from the background, which is the lake, the sky, the mountain, and did a little 3D move on it. Pretty cool. Also, I bent his arms a little bit so it looks like he's raising the camera up to his face. I'll show you how to do that as well. So that's what we're going to end up with. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now I'm in Photoshop. I've opened this image. It's a nice high-res shot. As you can see, it's one layer, obviously. It's just a photo. So I need to cut the guy out, and the ledge is separated from the background and paint the background in where he is, because obviously there's going to be a hole there. So I'm going to first of all duplicate the layer. I like to keep the original thing just in case I screw up. Turn it off, lock it, and I'm going to zoom in here. Now, a couple of ways you could do it, cut him out, is I could use the erase tool, erase the background. But we got a pretty clean edge here between foreground and background elements. So I'm going to go to the lasso, magnetic lasso. And what this does, if you haven't used it, is it automatically follows contours where there are two different objects, two different shapes. So I'm just going to slowly drag the mouse. I'm not holding down the button or anything. I'm just dragging the mouse. I clicked it once to start, and now I'm dragging, and it's automatically separating the two objects. So if I go kind of slow and I just watch what I'm doing here, it's doing a lot of the work for me. Very cool tool. If the photo is clear enough, distinct enough, where the front and the back are separate enough. I'll go over here and do this. Now I'm going to hold down space and drag. Haven't changed tools. Just going to go on like this. It's sloppy, but I can change that later. Just going to get a rough selection here. Dragging, space bar. Dragging. Get to the beginning. I get that little circle. Click. Boom. So I have a selection. Not perfect again, but it's a start. Now, if I want to see my selection a little more clearly, see what's inside and outside, I press Q on the keyboard. This is the quick mask mode, if you guys are familiar with this. Anything in red is outside my selection, and anything that's natural color is obviously inside. You can see I got some grunge here. This has not been cut yet. This isn't clean. This isn't perfect around here. So when you're in quick mask mode, you can use the brush and the eraser tool to adjust your selection. So if I go to hit B for brush, and I'm going to make it a little bigger, I can go here where I see a little sky under his arm here and this kind of thing. Make the tool smaller. I can actually just draw and add to the selection. So it's like a painting, but I'm not. I'm actually adding to the selection. Or I should say subtracting from the selection, I guess. Now if I hit escape, if I hit erase here, erase, I'm in the erase tool. I'm going to make it a little less fuzzy. You can see it's fiddling too much of the strap, so I erase what's selected there and cut the strap out. So I'm just going to work my way around my selection here. And these aren't real clean, so B for brush. And I'm just clicking and dragging and drawing. Space bar to move it. Hold space bar, drag it, let go. Here, I want to get more of that leg thing, so I'm going to erase this little wrinkle here. Here I need to add to it, so I hit B for brush, click and drag, drawing. Okay, again, I didn't get between the legs, so if I hit B for brush and I make it a little bit bigger, I can just kind of draw. I could use a lasso here, but I'm just going to use the brush. Bracket keys are the shortcut to make the brush bigger or smaller, or I can right click and change the size this way and the hardness. I usually like it not quite fully hardness, not 100%, keep it in the 90s, something like that. So you get a little bit more of a natural edge than just a hard cut edge. So I'm just going to kind of do this and this. Again, there's faster ways to do this, but yeah, this works. Just tracing along, tracing along. Bigger for the bracket, smaller for the other bracket. Tracing along, tracing along. Isn't this exciting? When you do this, it's always good to err on the side of taking too much of the guy, because if you leave too much white, like this, too much background, it's obviously going to look like a yucky cut. If I take a little too much guy, nobody's going to notice if I take a couple extra pixels there. Bracket, brush, brush, brush. Yeah, take a little bit more of the guy than you need to. And I can always clean it up once I cut him out. I can always erase if I want. So here I got too much. I got a little aggressive here with the leg and this part of this thing. So erase tool, brush tool, brush tool. This quick match mode is great because you can much more easily make adjustments to your selection. Erase tool, rock, brush tool, erase tool. Sort of drag. I'm going to go out here, put bigger and zoom out. Erase, 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 erase the mask, erase the mask. Get the idea. Erase, brush. Just for the tutorial, I'm going to kind of zip through this. It'd probably take a little more time with it, but I know this is like watching paint dry, so I'll just kind of zip through it here. Is that water or is that rock? I guess that's rock. Yeah, there's rock there. That's rock. That's rock. There's rock. Is that water? I'm gonna call that water. Call that water. This is rock. And you can see how the magic wand had a tough time here because the rock and the water are very similar looking colors and shapes. So I had a hard time with that part, but I'm just going to brush and erase, brush and erase, brush and erase. Ooh, that's nasty. Get that, push that out. Shoe's not perfect, but that's good enough for now. Okay, now let's go up here, brush that. A little bit of the brushiness here. And in this exercise, the guy's going to be standing on top of pretty much what's behind him already. We're just doing a slight move. So in this case, if the edges aren't perfect, it probably won't be too obvious, but we want to do the best we can, obviously. Okay. Erase that. Oh, what is that? That's sky, isn't it? That's sky right there, I think. Erase. I used to work in news. There's a lot of this kind of thing. We'd cut out people's heads for bad guys. We put the bad guys on TV. We had to cut their head out of some mugshot or something and put it on the background. So I got a lot of experience doing this kind of thing. Like brush, 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 erase. Whoops, brush. Something like that. Okay. I'll call that good. Now, Q gets me out of quick match mode, and you can see my selection here. Okay. So the guy and the rock are selected. background on that. So I hit copy, paste, and I get a new layer here. Bigger. How do I make these bigger? There. I got a new layer that's just the guy and the rock. Okay, turn it on, turn it off. Now to cut the background, I'm going to hold down the control key on Windows, make a command on the Mac. I select that layer with the control key click down. Now I can select what's on that layer. Basically, I got my selection back. I go to this layer, hit delete, and then I deselect, command D or control D. Now I have this background layer with him cut out. Obviously, there's a hole there. So I put him on top of it. We got to fill in that hole with what's back on. Now, a couple of ways to do that. One is the clone stamp tool. Clone stamp. Shortcut is S. And if you haven't used this, the way this works is it'll take one part of an image and paint it on the other part wherever you click. So I'm going to make sure my brush is nice and soft, fairly large. Okay, and I'm trying to paint. It says you cannot use the clone stamp because you haven't defined the source point. So I hold down Alt on the keyboard. Sorry, I think it's Option on the Mac. I'm going to click over here in the water. Now, move over here, and if I click and paint over here, it's copying this part of the water over here. So I'm just going to click and drag, click and drag. You can see the edge isn't perfect, but for now it's okay. Option, Alt click there, click and drag, click and drag. I'm just going to work my way through the water. Option click and drag, option click, click and drag, option click, click and drag. Just get a rough clone in there. Sometimes the bigger the brush, the better, so you don't get repeating pixels too much. You're going to get some, obviously, but option click, drag, option click, drag, drag, drag. Getting up near the edge there. Don't get too crazy with that. Again, I'm going pretty quick here just for the purpose of this. I'd probably take more time with it if I have more time with it. A little bigger. Bigger brush. You can see a little bit of a repeating pattern here. It's not great. Just kind of keep working on it, keep massaging it until you get it to where it looks a little bit more natural. I'm going to get in here tight and I'm going to do the coastline here. So I'm going to make my brush a little smaller, make it a little bit harder. Okay, escape. No, I don't want that. Okay, let's just do it with the keyboard. Okay, now if I click here on the coastline, boom, move over here and kind of see what's going to happen if I click. I haven't painted it yet, but if I can kind of see where it's going to end up. So I'm going to line that up with the coastline, click and do a little drag. And I'm kind of being careful here. Do the same thing over here. Alt click, click and drag, that kind of thing. Let's paint in these mountains. Click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. Option click, click and drag. Just kind of get some, hopefully something with a little bit of randomization in the rock, so it doesn't look like it's repeating again. Now this part's tricky where I got the sky and peaks. I'm gonna have to kind of click and drag, unless it's repeating like crazy, which looks terrible, but I can fix that. And again, I'm just flying through this, but not bad. Not bad. For today's purpose, that's not bad. The guy's going to be over that in our thing too, so he's going to cover up some of our little mistakes there. Make sure I save. Call it Lake Man 1. Now that's the clone stamp. The other way that you might want to fill in a hole is the new feature in, somewhat new feature in Photoshop called Content Aware Fill. I hit L. Actually, I'm going to go to Lasso Tool to make a selection. I'm going to make sure my background's on. I'm going to drag a selection like that. I have it feathered about 15 pixels, which is good. This sometimes takes a little fidgeting with, but if I go to edit, content aware fill, wow, look at that. Here's my preview window. I made a selection. I want to fill this selection with content that matches the surrounding area in this image. So Photoshop is so brilliant that it mathematically looks at what's there and fills it in. Okay, brilliant up to a point. It added some random floating mountain there. I don't know. I obviously don't want that. But it's a start. I'm going to go ahead and say okay. Boom, it creates a new layer with that new fill area. You can see here there's like no seams at all on this outer part. If you ignore the mountain, that's pretty good. But obviously we can't have the mountain there, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to go ahead and merge these two layers down, so I'm dealing with one image. And I think I'll go back to my clone stamp. Option, click, drag. Option, click, drag. Get that out. Obviously I'm getting kind of sloppy again, but that's not terrible. Not great, not terrible. Put the guy over it, you'll never tell. But I got a nice clean edge on my shoreline. Water look halfway, somewhat natural. This is a little chunky, but I can live with it. Okay. I'm going to make my layers real quick. We're going to call this lake. Rename this layer, double click, call it man. Save. We can get rid of that layer because I don't need it now. Boom. Let's put that in After Effects. We have two layers, one with a man and one with a lake. Close that sucker out. I already saved it. Okay, After Effects is opening. Slowly opening. Slowly opening. Come on now. Here we go. Or that. Make a new project. I'm going to click over in the project window and import my Lake Man, which is right here, Lake Man 1. Import. I want to make sure the import is set to composition, retain layer sizes. Okay. And it imports my folder with my two layers in them. Also creates a composition, which I'm not going to use. I'm just going to delete that. Oops. Let's say I'm going to delete that. And then I'm going to make a new composition, a little smaller one. Yeah, let's just go with HD. That's good. We'll go with 5 seconds for now. Okay, I'm going to drag my lake in there. There's my lake, size it up. Drag my man in there, put it on top of my lake, size it up. I'm worried about scale right now, but just going to get them in place. Now, I can make them 3D layers. To do that again, we click on the cube symbol for both. That gives us P for position, Shift S for scale, gives us the Z axis. So the lake I want to put way back in the background. I mean, we're talking, quarter of a mile away, but I also need to scale it up to compensate for the distance. So I'm just going to drag it way back in Z and scale it up to fill my frame. As you can see, it's kind of working out already. Man, I'll just leave where it is. Okay, those look good. Now we're going to make a new camera. So I right click down here, new camera. Let's go with a one node camera this time. That stuff's fine. Boom, there's my camera layer in pink. Active camera is turned on my viewpoint here. So we're good to go. Now, since we just made a one node camera, when I do an animation, instead of the point of interest animating, I'm going to animate rotation. The camera's actually going to rotate. It's not going to point at something. It's going to rotate. So I want to set keyframes. First frame of the composition, keyframe on everything here. And let's set our starting point. So I'll go back to my camera tool. I'm going to start with the Z camera tool. Just drag this back a little bit. Not sure what kind of move I'm going to do. I think I might do kind of a combination push in and maybe a little bit of a slide. So let's start kind of wide like that. Obviously the guy's not looking good, so I'm going to go ahead and P for position and move him over the front a little bit and make it a little bit bigger to scale. Back to my selection tool, just drag him over here someplace. Okay. So that'll be kind of our starting point. Go to the end here. I can hit end on the keyboard if I want to get to the end. Camera tool, Z. We're going to just do this little push in. Look at that cool. That's looking, it's already looking cool. I already got some depth there. Okay, so I'm going to push in like that and then change the camera tool to X and Y. Now I can slide the camera to the X and Y axis. Keyframes are being set for me. Orientation and position. I guess I didn't need these rotation keyframes, but I set them anyway. Back to the beginning. Preview. Yeah, huh? Pretty cool. All that from one image. And again, the clouds are a little chunky, but if you didn't know to look for them, you probably wouldn't notice. They're not perfect, but I could go back and clean them up. I just don't need to for this. So here it is in real time. Cool. That's awesome. Save. Make and one. Okay. Now let's make the man animate a little bit. We're going to do a very subtle motion where he's going to kind of bring the camera up to his face. I don't have a whole lot of leeway in his arm because his arm's already bent. Excuse me. I'll just have it very subtly raise up. So to do that, we're going to use the puppet tool. So I'm going to select the man. I'm going to select the puppet tool. It's up here. And the way the puppet tool works is you add points, nodes, that you can animate. It'll bend the image. Excuse me. So let's push up this. So I'm going to click a node on his hand. We want his elbow. One here. Mostly just going to animate his elbows and his hands. So these are just going to be like my anchor points. By setting a point here, if I animate these will be locked in space. So the whole thing isn't bending. It's just going to be his arm. So that's my end. My end of my comp. If you see, I open the puppet tool. Now I have on my layer this thing called puppet. If you open up the mesh, it created. I did 8 clicks, so it created 8 pins and put keyframes on them. I can push U and see those keyframes right here. There they are, 8 keyframes at the end. So I want to end up in that space. So let's go back to the beginning. And I'm going to have his elbow just lower a little bit. So when I start at the beginning, it'll animate up. So I grab a pin. I'm just going to, whoops, I don't want them all. All right, there we go. Okay. I have them all selected. There we go. So I'm going to grab, I'm still in my puppet tool. I grab one of them and I just drag it down a little bit. And you can see how it kind of deforms them. But we don't want to deform them. I'm going to kind of drag them all at one time. So they all move at the same time, kind of roughly. That's the trick, is to do this without deforming it too much. So it looks like it's the same thing. So let's preview that and see how it looks. Probably not the best image to do this with, but to start, set the resolution back down a quarter so we can move a little faster here. Yeah, so you can see it's moving a little bit. Play it again. A little bit of motion there. Yeah, a little bit of motion. I could probably extend it a little bit more. Let's move a little bit more. See how far we can go before it looks weird. Again, I'm only moving these these 3 points. And I set these kind of around as an anchor, so because I don't want his head to twist too much. I don't want the backpack to move really in this case. Just drag these down. Preview that. It's subtle, very subtle, but probably going to look pretty cool. Let's preview it. Yeah, yeah, that works. That's the puppet tool. Puppet tool is very complicated. I mean, it can be very complicated. It's got a lot more tools in it than just what I used. You can grab more than one pin. You can bend things, start points, do a lot of great animating, whether you animated cartoon characters and that kind of thing with it if you want. But for this purpose, we're doing a very slow, subtle movement. So I'll call that done. That is how to create a parallax from a still image and add a little bonus animation. So hope this made sense. And thanks for watching my first ever tutorial. I will see you guys in class.